Hello there. Welcome back to the Gnomon stream. I'm your host, Adam Hartel. And if you are not familiar with Gnomon, or you're only familiar with us through the Gnomon workshop, Gnomon is an actual 3D art school located in Hollywood, California. We are training artists for careers in animation, film, games, visual effects, and so forth. And the intro you just saw there was a reel of our actual campus. So if you'd like to learn more about Gnomon, if you'd like to hear more about our programs and how you can train with us, I'll be sharing a short informational session following our time with Josh Herman today. And let's get into that. We do have closed captioning available on our YouTube channel. If you're in need of that, you can find that there. And this stream will be available as VOD on Twitch as well as YouTube following our live stream today. So I'd like to introduce Josh, who is, for some of you, probably doesn't really need an introduction. He's been regularly hosting on the Gnomon stream, and we've had him on recently. But Josh, comes to Gnomon as our chief creative officer with over a decade of experience in film, television, and games. He's also an alumni of Gnomon, our certificate in digital production program, and he's worked as a creative director, art director, and character designer for prestigious studios such as Marvel Studios, Naughty Dog, Legacy Effects, and Cloud Imperium. Josh also loves to pay it forward to other artists by teaching classes and workshops where he can help continue the education of others so that they can find their passions, just like he did at Gnomon. He's a graduate of Westwood College and has a Bachelor of Science in Animation. He also continues to work on personal projects, exploring ideas for films, graphic novels, and tabletop games. Some of Josh's professional projects include The Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor Ragnarok, Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception, and Star Citizen. And so with that, I'd like to welcome to the stream Josh Herman.
Hello.
Josh, welcome back, sir.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. What about you?
Yeah, doing very good. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in exactly the same place I was the last time we streamed together.
Same. Yeah.
Yes, such it is in quarantine.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's good for folks that don't know yet. You stream regularly on Wednesdays, and you host a really great art jam. I think you're in your second season now, correct?
We're in our second season. I feel I don't know the amount of episodes that we've done, but we've probably done somewhere in the 40s amount of 40, maybe 50 of episodes. And yeah, we stream every Wednesday. We've been streaming from 10 to 1 for a long time, almost a solid year. Our first stream was on April 1st, from what I recall. So in 1 month, we'll have done a full year of these art jams, which has been fun. So spending a couple hours just hanging out and making stuff. Sometimes it's ZBrush, sometimes it's Maya, sometimes it's a little bit of everything. But most of the time, we kind of focus on sculpting characters and creatures.
And it's been great. I think, if anybody out there is, it's sort of this great in-between place between it's not a full-on class, obviously. But it's not just a straight up casual hang. It's kind of like getting to step into the studio with you, watch you do your thing, learn a little bit of stuff along the way, talk, ask questions. It's been a really cool thing. So if you guys are interested in that as well, or if today's the first time you kind of get a glimpse of ZBrush and you want to see more, definitely tune into Josh's stream on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. All right, so I'll hand it over to you, sir. I know you got some great stuff to show us today in ZBrush. And I'll be here. I'll be taking questions in the chat as they come up. I'll try to bring them up to you, Josh, during our time or at least at the end. So yeah, take us away.
Sounds good. Yeah. Again, like Adam is saying, please feel free to ask questions if I'm doing something along the way and it's confusing, or you didn't catch what I was pushing, or something that you want me to recap. Please let them know so that I can cover it. Today we did this a couple weeks ago. We talked about like a very kind of 101 intro to ZBrush. So if you want to get some of that, you can go check out that VOD on our YouTube channel. But I'm going to recap a little bit of that now, but we're going to kind of jump, instead of doing characters, meaning human characters, we're going to jump into some ideas of how to do creatures. So you'll see ZBrush here. It's blank. I've loaded up a sphere, and so I'm going to drag that out onto the canvas just by clicking and dragging, and I'm going to hit T to go into our edit mode. Again, some of this stuff is what we covered in the very first stream. So if you don't know much of the interface of ZBrush, I would check that out so you don't have problems like this, which we uncovered last week, of if you have a model and you keep drawing it over and over and over on the screen and you can't figure out how to sculpt it. How you can fix that problem and get in there is pretty easy. TLDR, if you don't want to go watch the video, you just drag this out and hit the T button. If you see many of these appearing, you hit Control N, and that'll clear it, and then T to go back here. So if you, again, if that's too fast and confusing, you can go watch that other video, but just to kind of get started, what we're going to do is this sphere. Now, I actually loaded up the sphere. You can go into Lightbox at the top of ZBrush, and you can go into this Dynawax sphere, and that's what I loaded. So this project is available to anybody that has the full version of ZBrush. The only thing that I did is I turned down my dynamesh just a little bit. That's not super important. You just note that the size of these polygons is going to be a little bit different than if you load up, but you can really start from anywhere you want. Now, when you start with a creature, oh, go ahead, Adam. It sounds like you
I was just going to mention, I know there's also a free option out there for somebody who just kind of wants to check out ZBrush. Can you tell us how we can find that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a version called ZBrush Core Mini, and it's a free program. And I could sculpt, or you could sculpt in this program using that, like exactly what I'm going to do today. You can very likely do the bulk of that in the program. It is trimmed and slimmed, so it's just the essentials to be able to sculpt, but it is a really easy, and try it out. Check out ZBrush Core Mini for free. They do have a $10 a month subscription version, which is ZBrush Core, and then the one that we're using here today is the full version of ZBrush, which is, I think it's $30 or $40 a month for that subscription model. So they're not bank breaking, but there are also some free versions. If you just want to explore, or if you want to get it in the hands of your students or something like that, there's ways you could do that.
It's such a powerful tool. I think even the core version, you can do so much at a beginner level for learning.
Absolutely. And just to understand about sculpting, like, I think that's a big thing that we're going to talk about today. In general, I think a lot of people look at 3D, they look at ZBrush, they look at all these buttons, they look at what's happening, they watch these time lapses maybe, and it's really confusing and it can be daunting. And in reality, all it is just sculpting in digital space. If you can sculpt in clay, if you've ever taken a ceramics class, a pottery class, anything like that, a figure sculpting class, if you've ever gotten out some Sculpey and sculpted something in your hands, or Play-Doh, it's really the same thing, but it just is digital. And so there's that weird disconnect of how do you touch the thing that's in the computer, and that's how you see people using pens or tablets, but you can use a mouse if that's all you have as well. So yeah, definitely super accessible. What we're going to do is we're going to go into our first, to get started, I'm going to make sure that I have two cursors on this sphere here. You'll see that there's one here and there's one kind of here. So they're kind of mirroring each other. That's going to make sure that when I sculpt something, it will work in symmetry. That's an important thing that we're going to want to do today. And that's one of the power of digital sculpting, right? A lot of people ask, why would you sculpt digitally versus traditionally, or why did it get popular? And there's a couple big reasons, and one of those is going to be symmetry, so I can sculpt something exactly the same on both sides, and also the undo key is a huge thing that you can't do in traditional sculpting or traditional art, is undoing a stroke or redoing a stroke. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a new brush. Now, if you've seen the previous stream, you'll know this already, but if you hit B for brush, or you come up here, you'll get a lot of these brushes. You don't need most of these. So we're going to find our move brush. The easiest way to figure that out is hit M for move, and it'll isolate just the ones that start with M, and we'll find our move brush here. I can hit S for size, and that will bring my size slider up, and we'll zoom out, and we'll start moving around. Now, if you don't know how to navigate within ZBrush, I'll make this a little different so we can see that we're actually rotating around an object. You can come over here to the side. There's some hotkeys, which is what I'm using, but you can also use these three buttons here on the side. One will move the canvas, one will scale and zoom the canvas, and one will rotate the canvas. And so if you don't want to understand or learn, or you just want to get right into things, there's these three buttons that will help you start navigating right away. We're going to start making a creature, right? That's kind of why we're here today, is to figure out some starting tips on making a creature. Now, if I was going to make a human, I would start making this sort of humanoid head shape, and that's kind of the easiest way, right, to begin doing this. And this is kind of what we did in the previous stream. I'm going to change our mat cap so it's a little easier for y'all to kind of see what we're looking at here. All right, so we kind of got this more clay-like material. And then if I was, again, sculpting a human, I might carve in where the eyes are going to go, where we like to look for the bone structure, so we might make a skull, right? And this is kind of where we get into making a humanoid shape. But when we're making creatures, that's important, but it's not the most important thing, right? We don't have to care about all this. We kind of need to start focusing on what's going to make an interesting creature. Now, creatures often you're going to find is going to be comparative anatomy, or we're going to be looking at zoological anatomy, which is going to be basically animals. So we'll be looking for animals or shapes in animals or other creatures. It doesn't have to be mammals, right? We can be looking at insects, we can be looking at birds, reptiles, etc. So you can be looking at all different kinds of things that nature has created. A lot of the concept artists that I know really get deep into different types of creatures, especially in research. So things like tardigrades, which if you're a Star Trek Discovery fan, made a nice appearance. So we're going to go into our move tool and we're going to find a shape. We don't need this humanoid shape, so we're just going to make a random shape today.
If you don't mind me jumping in, Josh, I'll say as someone who has spent a lot of time drawing characters and only fairly recently gotten into creatures through Kyle Brown's class at Gnomon. If you've never done creatures, give it a try. It's super fun. Because you're not limited to just one anatomy type, and you can go way out there and get really creative. It's a great time.
So, what any suggestions from the chat, or any suggestions from you, Adam, on what type of creature we should make today?
We're getting away from humanoids, so why don't we let's make a predator. Let's make a predator that. Okay. I don't know. I'll let you decide creature anatomy types to pull from, but let's do something dangerous. You kind of already got some angular shapes going on anyway in your form language.
Sure. And so the key thing that you kind of pointed out right there was you said predator. So I'm not thinking like predator, like
no,
of course predator, not, but like more in the way of an animal predator. And so that already is going to give us some key insights. When we think about animals and prey versus predator, there's two specific things. And the first thing that's going to come out is how they attack, how they fight, how they hunt, right, is a big thing that we need to be conscious of. And that'll actually play pretty heavily into certain parts of their structure, their bone structure. So if you look at animals specifically and you start looking at skulls of a lion, what you'll notice at the skull of a lion, so I'm actually just going to quickly Google lion skull so we can pull it up here on our screen for reference.
While you're doing that, also, somebody in the chat said, and something with beetle horns would be really cool.
And something with beetle horns. Perfect, yes.
And thank you for clarifying. We're not doing the predator, we're doing a predator. Correct. So we're not going to be getting to the chopper today. We're going to be going to be making a creature.
So things that we look at on a predator skull, meaning a lion skull, and we'll compare something like a rabbit skull. Let's just kind of get those two here, and we can immediately see a couple different types of things that are going to be happening. Let's see. Where's a good one that's a comparable angle? Sure. So just pulling some images here for y'all to see. So we have our lion skull and we have our rabbit skull, and you'll notice the difference in the structure of the mouth, right? But this is going to be things that we start looking for in creatures. We're not going to necessarily rip this one for one and say, okay, I'm making everything here that's on this lion, but we need to understand what the underlying structure is doing and why and how it plays into making that creature, character, animal, successful in what it does. So first things we can look at right here is the structure of the mouth and the teeth. Look at all the massive canines, right, and all these big chomping teeth in the back here. Whereas if you look at the rabbit, they don't have any of those. You look at horse skulls, you look at other herbivores that graze or eat, mostly things like that. There's a really big difference here. The second thing that we're going to look at is the size of the eye. Look at, notice again that in scale, right, the rabbit's going to be yay big compared to the lion, but look at the size of the eye in comparison to the size of the skull. That it's huge in the rabbit, right? And it's also fixated on the side of the head. You'll notice this with a lot of birds, rabbits, rodents, some kind of in-betweens. You'll see this on horses as well. The eyes are fixated on the side. They're actually pointing opposite directions. Chameleon is a perfect example of this, even though it's kind of a hybrid, right? And that's so that they have a wider range of vision. Now they aren't able to focus on something specifically as well, but they can see more around them, and that's what helps them be aware of what's approaching them. The opposite is seen here with the lion, where the eyes are fixated in the front of the eyes, on the front of the face, much like a human. We have eyes that are on the front, and that's so we get better depth perception and we can focus on a single target, right? And so that immediately, just pulling between the two types of things that we're looking at, we can say, is this a prey or is this a predator, based on what we're looking at. Some other cool features to just kind of look at right here is, I think it's really fascinating. There's two elements. One is the jaw. So the bone structure actually goes all the way down here, and this ridge up here on the top of the head is where your jaw, your mandible muscles connect. So they actually go underneath this little bone here, and you can actually see the gap right here, where all this muscle is going to go in through here, and it goes all the way and connects to the top of the head. There's in fact so much muscle on a lion's head that this orbital socket right here is missing, because it actually encroaches so much on the eye socket that the bone can't be there. And if you actually watch video of a lion eating, you will watch their eyes slowly bulge out of their head as the mandibles crunch and that muscle pushes their eyes around.
Wow.
That's an interesting element that is not on the rabbit. And again, one last feature is we'll look at the nose. So we know what a human nose looks like, right? It's a smaller area, and look at the nose here. This is more of a small sniffing nose. It's looking for one specific sense or things that can be grazing for. And this is like an air intake in a car, right? This is the front, intercooler of a sports car. It is designed to funnel as much air into the brain as fast as it can while it's running, right? It's not meant for long speeds, but it's got a very specific differences. So we can use these when we start talking about creatures and breaking down comparative anatomy, which is kind of what we're talking about here, right? So we
Hey, Josh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just the chat would like to know if you have any recommendations for creature anatomy books.
Creature anatomy books. I do have some recommendations for creature anatomy books. Some things that I like is going to be Atlas Obscura. Sorry, I'm going to disappear for a half second into the background. Let's see. That is a good one. This is a book that I actually worked on. I'll pull this one up, and it's an older book, but it might be useful for people. So Atlas Obscura is a really fantastic book here. I'll show it to as I roll over my headphones cord, but Atlas Obscura is what this book looks like, right? And so you can kind of take a look at the inside of this book, and you're going to have a lot of different things in here that are cool. Natural Curiosities is another book, which I believe I have upstairs. Otherwise, I would pull that one out for you. And it has a lot of really great templates. And then this is a book that I worked on called Essence Creatures. It's almost 8+ years old at this point, but I worked out with a lot of really great artists on this, Andrew Baker, Brian Wynia, Simon Weber, Martin Rosard, Ian Joyner, James Van den Bogart, and Eris, who's an amazing clay sculptor. And so in this book, we did several creatures. And you can take a look at this, and it kind of breaks down each person's process. So this is another one that I would look at. This is Brian Wynia's. I'm going to do this really quick so you can see a little closer. But you can see sketches. So this is Brian going from a sketch phase, how he's breaking this down, all the way into his processes for doing ZBrush sketches. Ooh. And then to a final render here. So this is a really great one that goes through all different types of creatures, all different types of characters, from different types of mammals to, different things here. And this is
very cool. It's
older, but it's got a lot of really interesting different takes on things. That's another book that I would recommend. Good question, though. All right. We were looking for beetle horns. That's the other thing I was looking for. And thank you for the questions, everybody. If you have more, as always, please feel free to ask.
While you're looking for some horns, someone wants to know, they're sort of looking at, because Blender is free as well and has some sculpting tools in it. They're kind of weighing out Blender versus ZBrush Core Mini. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess the question, I think we get the Blender questions quite a bit, right? And the question that I always ask the questioner is, what's your goal? I think Blender is a fantastic program for getting into 3D. It's another free program, and it probably has more capabilities than ZBrush Core Mini will, especially comparing free program to free program. But I think if you want to get into sculpting, Blender can sculpt. It's not an amazing sculpting package, but it's capable. right? But if you're really interested in sculpting, I think you're going to want to get into something like ZBrush sooner rather than later, just because it's such a specific thing in the industry that I think you'll find a lot of value in it, basically.
Mm-hmm. As someone new to ZBrush in the last year, I can definitely say I was in a similar position. I was like, well, I'm using Blender for some hard surface stuff, and I know that you can sculpt there as well. I tried both. This is just my personal opinion, but I found Blender to, I found ZBrush to be a lot more, I don't know, intuitive. It just felt more like sculpting to me using that. So yeah.
It's hard to equate, but there is like a certain feel, for lack of a better term. There is a feel to what you're doing and how easy it is to use. So I always use this clay buildup brush. So I use mostly my move brush, which does functions like this, meaning it moves large shapes. And then I use my clay buildup brush, which is a sculpting brush to add forms, to add shapes, and or subtract shapes. So that's the kind of brushes that I use. And I think that it's just a more refined sculpting app. I'm not saying you can't use Blender to do it. It's definitely possible, but something that we want to focus on, I guess, is what one's better for what things. ZBrush is going to be better for sculpting. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm blocking out using that lion skull as some rough shapes here. I think I'm going to eventually get into some of that horns here. Noting that I probably want to put the eyes somewhere in here. I'm just kind of carving this in as like a landmark. I could put them anywhere, right? We could make it a land, a hammerhead shark style, right? You can do it whatever way you want to do it.
Just watching you would you describe your brush and like radically drag around those forms? There's so many ideas that just like pop up right there.
We were talking about the idea of doing some horns. So these are not necessarily beetle horns in this way. I'm kind of looking at several beetles on my other monitor here. We could take this and maybe try bending them. I don't know what this is going to result in, but we'll see. Looks like a cow. It's like some sort of more of a defensive thing. So you start noticing shapes that recall to other shapes or animals you've seen. So even though this is like looking more like an animal, that like a steed of some kind, we can always change that around and take them and squish them. So I can squish these things, and then I can start moving them and doing whatever we feel like is good. So what I start looking for is silhouette and shape, right? This is definitely feeling more like putting them in that arrangement feels too defensive, which I don't really feel like this is what we would want our predator creature to do. Something maybe that's sweeping. Something when you start adding elements like this to a creature is you got to kind of ask yourself, what's the point of this? What am I adding to this and why? Right? You can add cool shapes. You can add interesting angles. You can add cool things to it, but what is that doing? Right? And I think that's what the example of the looking at the skulls does really well. Is every element of the skull, even when you start breaking it down, is specifically designed, right? It's designed to do exactly what that animal or that creature needs to do. And so we want to kind of keep that in mind. So you can throw horns and stuff on to make it look interesting, but the question is why would like a lion ever have horns? Would it have horns? And if the answer is not really, then should they be on there, or is it just because you wanted to put horns on something, So I'm going to put horns on. I'm going to put or maybe this is a question for you, Adam, or for the chat. Let's explore what would this predator need horns for? What are they using them for?
Let's give the chat an opportunity to chime in on that.
Yeah,
what would this predator use horns for?
And as we do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep blocking out the skull structure. So we saw the skull structure. I have that over on my other screen as well. I still have this lion reference. So I'm continuously referring over to that as some of the bigger areas. I know that I want some really large teeth in here at some point. So I'm kind of blocking out some forms. We'll figure out a nose. I like that there's this big like air intake. I don't necessarily want to do like a big cat nose, right? Or a big dog or bear nose like they have. But maybe let's make it more I don't know, creaturey, darker, I guess. We'll go in a darker direction because we've got these horns. All right, I'm going to dynamesh this. What you'll notice is dynameshing, where I'm clicking and dragging, is going to wrap this whole mesh in a new mesh.
All right, we got some art direction coming in on the chat, Josh.
All right, tell me, Adam.
I'll start cannonballing some ideas here. Someone ready. Said they can use their horns to pick each other's teeth. Another one would be using them for goring, or posturing for mates. To look bigger, intimidation. Let's see, dominance. Yeah,
dominance,
so cool ideas coming in, guys.
Okay.
Opening a bottle of beer, someone said.
Yeah, they can be at my next party then.
Awesome.
All right, I'm going to put some teeth in here. Let's start with teeth, and then we'll get into the horn. So I'm just going to grab this sphere. All I did is hit append sphere. I added another area here. We didn't really get into this too much in the previous stream, so I can grab this around. I'm just scaling it. I can use my move brush. I'm not working in symmetry right now, and I'm going to basically turn this into a really large saber-tooth canine, as we see kind of here, right? So I'm just making this shape right there. All right, my pen is reacting to the tablet as I have it in the same hand. All right, just going to grab this, kind of morph it into a familiar shape that we've all likely seen.
What kind of material are you using, by the way?
I'm just using a matte cap that I found on ZBrush Central. ZBrush Central is like an online forum.
Feels a little bit like bone.
Here. Yeah, a little ivory-like, right?
Yeah.
It's in here. I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to mirror it. So there's a plug-in up here where it's called Subtool Master, and you can hit mirror, and that will mirror things to the other side. It's an easy. Make sure my symmetry is on, and now I can just kind of pull these things around. So if I want like a long tooth coming out of here, that's nice and easy to do. Now we'll get some of those horns in, because I want to take these teeth, I'm going to push them into this head a little bit, and that's going to make it so I can begin sculpting on top of it. So now I know that's where those teeth are. And if I want to maybe carve in, I'm going to use my Damien standard brush, which you can go into your brush palette, hit D for Damien, and it'll be the first one right there. And you can just start carving. Yeah, go ahead.
And I was actually thinking of asking this. I'm glad someone chimed in the chat. Obviously, today we have limited scope because of time, so we're doing sort of a creature bust to the head. But when you're going to approach a creature as a whole, do you usually start with the head, or do you kind of sculpt it as a whole? Or do you have priority?
That's a really good question. Really good question. Let me just load up a previous tool, because we ended up doing a couple of these in the 2 streams ago on our art jam. So I'm going to show you what I started with. And this is a dragon. This is what I started with as a dragon. So before getting into the details of the dragon, I basically got all the pieces. Now, this is not what the final looked like. Again, this is save 1. And so you see I've got everything from what maybe the head will look like, the neck will look like, the body will look like, the legs will look like, etc. And each one of these is a different piece. I took a bunch of pieces, and I'll do this really quickly in the next sculpt, but I took them and I basically mashed them together. Think of it like Play-Doh, right? We can pretend that this is the green piece, this is the red piece, the blue piece, whatever. We mixed them all together to make this rough shape. And then what I ended up doing was, I'll show you the next save. I have 7 iterations of save. So we went through the first one here, and the second one is here. And so you see what I'm doing is I'm taking some of these pieces, and I'm just starting to warp them and shape them from something that feels more straight up, like almost dog position-y, right, to something that begins to feel a little bit more different. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to hit V, which is going to make it all black. And I'm going to change my background as well so you can see that a little easier. Let's do something like this. So you can see the before and the after, right? Even if we popped all the legs on and hide this, you'll see this is the before and this is the after of one save. And what I'm doing is I'm taking those individual blocks of clay and I'm mushing them around. So I'll open 2 more saves and we'll go back to our predator here. So this is a future version of this character. It's pretty close to the final. And what I've done at this point is taken from here to here. And now you can see the jump again where I'm continuously pushing these pieces. And what I'm looking for is the silhouette. So I'll load up the last and final version of this character here, which I think is this one. And it looks like it has some paint on it. So you're not seeing a significant difference, but you're seeing the silhouette change. And I'm focusing on, what does the flow look like throughout the body of this creature? right? So from something like this is kind of what we're kind of working with here. So slow buildup of blocks together to get to a final piece. So how does that apply to what we're working on here? Well, we've started with a head, right? I'm going to get the head shape a little further in line. And I'm going to use, just for sake of time, I'm not going to be able to make the most unique creature in the world today. So I'm going to make something that's, we'll just kind of go with this, make a little nose. And then let's start carving in some of where like the back of the head of its head itself will be. So we're just going to pretend that it's just like an action figure. If you ever popped off the head of an action figure, this is what this piece is going to be. I'm sure none of us have ever done that before, but
oh, never.
In case you've ever seen one, this is what it kind of looks like. So we've got this head here. I'm going to, just like we appended the sphere for the teeth, I'm going to do the same thing here for the neck and the body. So now I got this other one here, and I'm going to bring this out. Just moving that piece out. I'm going to go back to my move brush, and I'm going to start stretching this around. And this is a way that I see a lot of creature designers work. Looks like I'm not in symmetry, so I'm going to undo that. There we go. I see a lot of other creature designers work this way, and it's because it's really easy to block out the overall gesture of your character. Right now we're seeing it as lots of little blocks, right? But if I hit V, right, I can just treat it like that silhouette. And what is the character? Is it a humanoid creature, right? Does it need to be standing? And this is the rib cage, right? And eventually, are there going to be legs that kind of come down this way? Is that how this creature is going to stand? Is it a quadruped and it's going to be on all fours? Okay. If it is, then maybe I'm going to undo this and we'll say the body's going to need to go this direction, right? Is it gaunt and does it, kind of have a more regal posture where its head is up high? Is it something that's more kind of almost hyena and missile shaped, right? Where it's kind of has a very specific intention that you can begin to get with this. And this is kind of what you're seeing here, right? This is a different type of a posture than you're going to see with different characters. So we can bring in these elements and we'll just kind of do a little pushing around of this. I have no idea what this looks like in actual shape, but that's okay. It's not super important right now. So we'll bring this out and then we'll get some legs. So we'll append yet again. You're going to see a theme. Append a sphere.
Oh, sorry, Josh. Someone wants to know if you are planning on animating this creature, do you need to sculpt the limbs separately?
No, actually you don't. Often if you're going to be animating a character or a creature, you're going to want it all to be one piece so that the limbs and the joints can deform in a way that feels pretty natural. So eventually you likely want to bring them all into one, a mesh. So I'm just taking the sphere, I grabbed it and I stretched it so that it's kind of a capsule shape, right? I'm going to do that same thing I did with the teeth. I'm going to go into our plugin and I'm going to hit mirror. That's going to give us these little capsule legs here, right? It kind of starts to kind of look like a toy. Turn on my symmetry. I can dynamesh these so that I can sculpt on them. Just go into geometry, hit dynamesh, figure out whatever it is that we need. We can start
Speaking
sculpting.
of toys, Josh, I was just speaking with one of our industry-facing staff members at Gnomon this morning, and they were saying how there is really a big demand in the toy industry for people with this skill set right here.
Yes, absolutely. Toys have exploded. I mean, 3D printing in general is a massive part of the industry. I worked at my first job actually out of Gnomon was Legacy Effects, and so we got to do a lot of 3D printing. So this is War Machine Mark 1 helmet that I didn't make, but somebody else made. But really cool to be able to do stuff like this. This stuff is really popular in toys. It's really popular in jewelry. It's really popular in collectibles, in tabletop, right? Making things for Warhammer, making things for D&D, making things for even Gentle Giant. If you think of things like Gentle Giant is a company that does a lot of this work, but the heads on Pez dispensers, those are most likely sculpted digitally. Like there's so many things in your life that are very likely made digitally. There's so much stuff. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this hand or these limbs here, but I can kind of get in here and get to know what this body shape would look like, right? So in a little bit of time, you're probably going to see a similarity between what this shape is looking like, right, compared to what this shape is looking like. And this is back to our very first dragon sculpt that ended up being this. So I'm taking these blocks and I'm placing them here because I want to kind of understand the relationship between them, and I can then begin to kind of dial that in to something that feels more natural. I'm just going to quickly make this a little more presentable and just clip this so that we only are looking at the front of our here. Now, we did say we wanted to add some horns. Go ahead.
Someone's asking your opinion on ZSpheres in your workflow.
ZSpheres. I don't use ZSpheres all that often because I feel pretty comfortable in making whatever, right? But they are really great to build base meshes. They can be really, really useful in that. There are a lot more tools now than there used to be to make base meshes, right? Between Z remeshing, between dynameshing, between all these other things that, 5 years ago didn't exist. ZBrush has done a really great job in making it easy to make base meshes. It's really been something they're focusing on. Their new iteration with the mask to mesh feature is a whole nother way to kind of create and do that. So there's a lot of really easy and cool ways that you can do it. I think ZSpheres are nice, but I don't think for me, I feel like there's other ways that I would probably use something to make a base mesh versus ZSpheres. They're still solid.
Help me out in the beginning. If I was doing a creature like with 4 arms and I wanted to really think about it anatomically, they helped me as a beginner in ZBrush to kind of almost draw out the armature. Yeah. But I can see where, after a while you just get used to jumping into that process faster.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of seeing this like, I don't know, maybe this is more like a beetle, but
ooh, that's cool.
Noticing that putting these on, it does become very either omnivore or herbivore shapes very quickly.
Kind of bovine real quickly.
Yeah, right. And some of that's obviously the head that I quickly sculpted and what we're putting on here and maybe the style of the horns, but it's kind of difficult to find how this is going to be useful for this creature. And that's actually one of the most challenging parts, right? Is maybe it needs to be used something like this. Yeah, exactly. If we're talking about goring, right? And not, there's so many amazing creatures out there but there's also, when you're doing comparative anatomy, you want to be somewhat aware of what the audience is going to view it as, because they're also going to see it like this, right? Are they going to see this immediately as something that's not scary and it's more bovine, like you're talking about at first read? If so, that's not good for a scary creature. We need to go away from that. And so there is sort of a cultural element that comes to creature design and what the audience responds to in when you're working this way. I'm going to make a quick neck for this thing. So I'm going to make another sphere, come in here.
I like where you almost had it coming off, almost like off of the jaws, like part of the bone structure.
Yeah,
I wonder if we could get something coming off the jaw with a little bit of that beetle form language in it.
Somewhere in here. Like the double, like this thing.
Yeah.
Some sort of a...
Oh, wow. Yeah, almost like a chin gore scoop.
Duplicate them.
Oh, yeah. This is what I love about ZBrush. You can just get your ideas out so fast.
Yeah, that's like the best part about it is you're able to kind of create these shapes that you wouldn't normally be able to make. You can easily turn them off. You can easily undo them, right? Like, and you can explore. And I think this is what the best part of it is why it's become so popular in the industry is that you can. I've worked many times with the director just sitting over my shoulder, saying like, I don't know if I like that, So exactly the conversation we're having right now with you in the chat is like, what if there was 4? Okay, yeah, let's try 4. Where would the 4th go? Maybe it's here, maybe it's rotated down, maybe it's a little smaller. No, I don't think I like that. Like these are actual design conversations that you'll have where it's like, okay, maybe maybe there's just so many of them that it's like this weird porcupine, Cthulhu squid thing.
Yeah.
But you don't want to, like, you could do whatever you want,
Cthulhu's
and it's
pet
so fast. Yeah, exactly. It's so
threat.
fast that a director can look at it, or a creator or a visionary of any type can be like, I don't like that, or I do like that. Keep working on that. And that's what's really cool about doing creature design in ZBrush, is that it's so quick. It's so quick and easy to edit that you can do versions. So we could do, versions is one thing as well. So we can do, the version with horns and without horns. There's you see this a lot, is the older version, the more, the mature one, and the baby version. You can do this stuff really quickly. But yeah, creature design in ZBrush is really fun because you just get to make stuff. You get to explore stuff.
Yeah.
The shapes that you want to make. If you want to keep that there, okay, I kind of like these horns, but I want to make this more, these eyes. Maybe these eyes should be really small. So I'm going to just scale down these eyes until they're more beady. We talked about how the smaller the eye maybe is creepier, or it makes it more of a predator. Let's make sure they're rotated on the front. Maybe that'll give it more of a specific look. Okay, cool. Let's give them a very specific brow so that they're protected from the elements in this brow, right? And then there's a big bone structure here. Let's see that bone that we talked about coming through here. Let's get rid of some of this. That big bone on the top where we know this mouth is going to connect to. All this stuff that we kind of looked at. You can really quickly explore these shapes. Hide this horn specifically. I'm not sure I love that one. Let's get this jaw coming all the way through here and really kind of highlight that element. So it's so fast to explore, which is, the fun part about doing creatures.
I think I love,
doesn't take you long.
Coming from more of a drawing design background, getting into ZBrush, you can quickly get a form language if you just kind of keep repeating shapes, like making a copy and then moving it a little bit. It starts to be really cohesive very fast.
Where the mouth is actually going to be, we got to figure that out. We're getting this sort of mix of bovine and animal, like lion kind of thing going on, but it's making something. So
well, and really, and for those of you who may have joined halfway through, the point of this stream, guys, is to, introduce ZBrush as something to be able to do what Josh is doing right now very quickly, but also to translate it for someone who's more used to drawing these kind of forms. Like when you're drawing a creature, you got to start with the basic shapes and arrange them in a way that creates that silhouette you're looking for, and then you move into secondary forms and tertiary forms. So that's what Josh is doing with ZBrush, and I'll tell you, somebody that learned ZBrush coming from drawing, it is such a powerful tool. So just kind of blocking out the basics of this creature is come along very quickly today.
Yeah, it's I can say, okay, we're doing some different version of a saber-toothed cat, right? That's kind of what we've resolved in here. I use these other little blocks of clay, and I can eventually sculpt on them too. They don't all have to stay at that same level. You hide these legs because they're a little Gumby-like, but we can kind of explore what this is going to be like. Is it gaunt? Does it have spikes? Does it have what is in here?
Well, I like those shoulders.
I always like the panthers and tigers and lions, like that sort of really big muscular shoulders that kind of stick up here that you can watch, like when they walk, like the scapula is moving around.
Yeah, feels like it's ready to pounce on you.
Yeah, kind of like that menacing look that we've got getting here.
Someone's wanting to know, do you use ZBrush to do just straight up studies of existing anatomy, like just sculpting out an existing animal?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I actually, that's a perfect thing. I think I did one. I don't know if I have it here. Let me check. I did one a while ago. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull it and find it so quickly in my files. But I did a lion several streams ago. And that was actually a pretty fun stream because it was, very different, like just exploring something that was not and using it as a study to kind of continue that was actually quite fun. How I think I found it. So I was exploring a lion head. This is more of, I did a really bad quick mane, but exploring the shapes of starting from a block exactly like I did here, and saying, this is where some of what these shapes are going to be, and just beginning to understand what it was, right? And you actually see this with a lot of really great creature artists, is they'll spend time drawing animals, sculpting animals, and really evaluating comparative anatomy, because that's a lot of what you see in that, and understanding, how the digits in the hands are compared, right? Like if you look at digits of a human, like hand digits to a digit of a human, to a lion, to a horse, to a bat, and you compare all of those animals, that they all have very similar structures, but looking at the length of the digits, how they're different, how they get longer, how they fuse together, that's, we've kind of talked about this a lot, but it's creating this memory library of shapes and things that will be useful for you, but they also call on things that are real, and that adds an interesting thing for when you're making a creature or you're making something, because the audience, kind of what I was saying earlier, they can so quickly connect with that. So finding things that are creepy or people might have phobias of, right? So if I start pulling a lot of bat reference into something, people that are freaked out about bats may immediately have this reaction to them. Snakes, right? So you're going to find some of that kinds of reptiles. There's a lot of stuff in creature design that is very evokes specific visuals that make people uncomfortable. You see that in horror movies as well. There's obviously the opposite side of creature design, which is like the more cute, fun creatures, and so that's where you're pulling things. Like the Porg from Star Wars is a really great example of taking a puffin and making a fun, cute puffin, right?
Did you hear the story of how that came about?
I think so, but
there were birds on Skellig Island that they were like, "Are we going to try to paint these out of the shots?" And there were so many of them. They just developed this creature that to cover up a creature that was already kind of cute looking to begin with.
I think it was a puffin.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, because this is what a puffin looks like.
Oh, yeah.
So they just basically like popped a new head on those things.
That's great.
And the puffin is basically a porg. So how can you make something cute? Okay, well, we have this to work with. What else could we add to this? Ewoks, right? Wookiees. When you start looking at other creatures that are more humanoid, that don't have to be just animals, but they're definitely pulling in, things from dogs and bears, and things that are more. I think that most people would associate as friendly, maybe not bears, but the cuddly aspect of a bear. And so that's kind of the fun thing about creature design, is you're really just calling in all of these references and things. And then there's the totally abstract side of creature design, which is, I want to make something that's never been seen, something that's from Lovecraft, right? These things that are hard to describe, and or from things like Arrival, like making a creature, an alien that's in Arrival that you've never seen before.
Those are such a great design too. I love those.
There's really cool things that happen in all those, but it's still evoking. The tendrils in the Arrival creatures look so much like fingers and hands, right? So that when it's kind of getting up to the screen, that it looks like it's reaching out to you. It's signed to you in the design itself, but the viewer doesn't immediately connect with that, right? That the Arrival creature is basically, its whole body movement is the equivalent of sign language, right? And then it's putting its hand up and it's creating a form of visual language. Like, there's a lot of really cool things that happen in creature design, but it's sometimes not always seen because it's pulling from references that aren't normal, or it's very subconscious.
Well, you're making a really good point too, because I think a lot of times sometimes people can think, well, to get more creative, I've got to move away from reference. When in actuality, like, the best designer is nature.
Absolutely.
And just putting things that would normally be together is a great way to come up with a creative design.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's definitely a way to get into, something more creative is having reference. And that's often something that I'll do, is where I'll say like, okay, maybe shot one, the first time I make something is going to have no reference. I just want to explore a shape and see what kind of comes out. Cool. But afterwards, I definitely need to come in and bring in some reference that's going to call into whatever I'm working on, because it's really going to ground it, right? It's going to ground it, whether it's the anatomy of what we're working on, whether it's the shapes and styles of something that's working on. I think it's a really important aspect that doesn't get much love as it should, reference.
The way that the geometry on the shoulders reached its limitation and kind of sort of broke a little bit actually looks like a cool design.
Yeah, it's getting there, right? It's like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And this is one of the things, like if I smooth it, it's like, it's okay. I like something about this, so I'm trying to figure out what it is. But yeah, I mean, I think I love doing creature design. I think it's a fun thing that you can jump into right away, because I'm sure everybody's probably thought of a creature of something. Yeah. Any questions from the chat at all, by the way? Right.
We did have one come in. Yeah, we've been kind of hitting them as they come in, but we had one come in about, granted, we don't have time to dive into this today, but any tips on adding hair or fur?
Oh yeah, that's a whole thing. Hair and fur. ZBrush has some stuff in here to do something called fiber mesh, which is it's built-in kind of grooming setup. But if you're going to do it for like a real big project, you probably want to do it in a different program.
And I've seen people, if they just wanted to get an idea out quickly, they'll just kind of sculpt the impression
sculpt the hair
of hair for, kind of like when you're drawing, you don't draw every strand of hair. You're just giving some form language to it.
Absolutely. That's a big part of it. I don't know where these horns are going. Like they're right now going directly into the mouth. So I would need to
I feel like you've got a cool line from the ear, the curvature from the side view, the curvature of the ear down into the curvature of the horn. There's a cool connection that could be made there, maybe.
Pull it around.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Not exactly what this is, but I think we're making a hellhound now, unintentionally.
I'm seeing like maybe those horns aren't actually horns. Maybe they're connected to the ear canal and actually pick up sound.
Yeah. And then, you could get into like, oh, there's like these little, I have to upres it. There could be like, some sort of a texture on them that's going to have, pick up frequencies, or is it absorbing more information, or there's a lot of things you can do with that. So yeah, definitely fun to make these.
Well, we're almost at time, Josh. I hate to stop because we're having so much fun. But is there anything you kind of want to be able to wrap up with, or any kind of like final thoughts for people that are interested in this?
Sure. I think that the big thing that I would say, just for people, and if you're interested in creature design, if you're interested in character design, and interested in sculpture, it's doing, this type of work can seem daunting. It can seem scary. It can seem, too technical, and it's really not. Like, it's really just sculpting with your hands in a different tool, and in a lot of ways, it's easier. If I've seen a lot of traditional sculptors who are really great transition, but I've seen also people who are not great at traditional sculpture transition and be really great digital sculptors, because they just really understand the tool. So it's something I really recommend for anybody who likes to draw, is to try sculpting in general. And if you're interested in trying sculpting, then why not try digital sculpting? So
yeah, definitely. And if all of this is new to you, I mean, you'll notice today that Josh really is not using a ton of these menus. He's using just a few basic tools. I know that ZBrush is a very powerful tool. So there's a lot of options, but it's important to know that to start using something like ZBrush, you don't have to learn all those options. You can get started into it the way that Josh shown us this week, a couple weeks ago as well. We're going to be coming back, in fact, in a couple of weeks with an industry artist by the name of Luis Carrasco, and he is going to be showing us some work that he's been doing using ZBrush, and also some of his sensibilities that come from drawing and 2D art of making some really cool creatures. So we're going to springboard off of what Josh has shown us today, and that won't be next week, but the following Friday. So 2 weeks from now. And as we just kind of wrap up a little bit here, we're gonna transition into an informational session, just a short time to let you know a little bit about Gnomon. So if you're seeing what Josh is doing, Josh also teaches at Gnomon as well. And if you're interested in taking maybe an individual class on an evening or a weekend, or you're looking for a full-time program to prepare you for a career doing this kind of stuff, Gnomon has a lot of options for you. And I'll be sharing just a little bit about that as we wrap up the stream today. But Josh, thanks again. These are always really fun times.
No, thank you.
Yeah, and if you this is a taste. If you like what you've seen here, definitely tune into what Josh is doing on Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific time. It's a great long haul, like 3 hours, just jumping in and getting a lot more in depth with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot more there, and just more general into the process of what I'm thinking about when I'm doing stuff too. So if you're interested in that, tune in and say hi.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Josh.
Thank you.
I look forward to the next opportunity we have to do this. This is always fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a couple of things ready to be able to share with you guys. But thanks so much, Josh. I guess we'll virtually say goodbye now.
Yeah.
And,
see you soon, Adam.
See you again soon. All right. Bye now. Right. Okay. So I'm going to get my screen share up here, guys, because I'd like to share with you a bit about what's happening here at Gnomon. As I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, Gnomon is essentially a 3D art school that specializes in training artists for careers in visual effects, games, and animation. The emphasis word there is careers. We're not just teaching some skills and then turning you loose to figure out how to turn that into a career. We are training you for the kinds of roles that the industry is looking to hire artists into. We've been doing this since 1997. And we were first started by an industry artist by the name of Alex Alvarez, who continues to be our founder and president to this day. And Alex is still very involved with Gnomon. And since '97, we grew from being a place that was training industry artists into a full-blown college. Over the years, we've won a lot of great awards, ranging from ranking #1 worldwide as a school year. We've won #1 school in the US for VFX, games, and animation, which is pretty much our entire curriculum. So all of that just to give you an idea that Gnomon has been around for over 2 decades, and we're very good at what we do. Now, because of that, our alumni are doing some amazing things. So every one of the projects that I've put up on the screen here represents a project that a Gnomon alumni has contributed to. These are the kinds of projects that our graduates are working on today. And these are many of the studios who are regularly hiring Gnomon graduates. You probably recognize a good chunk of these studios, ranging from studios that are making some of our favorite films to our favorite games, as well as fantastic streaming content for television programs and whatnot. Now, at the top here, you see 97% industry placement. That was in 2019. We're in the high 90s as well for 2020, which is pretty remarkable during a pandemic. And a big reason for that is we actually make placement a part of the full-time program at Gnomon. We have a placement department that will meet with you, find out what your goals are, the kind of role that you want to move into as you're finishing the program, and they will coach you on putting together your demo reel, as well as how to start looking for work, how to go through interviews. They'll help you know how to reach out to a studio and point you in the right direction. Because of all of that, we have a very high percentile of graduates from our full-time programs that are finding their first jobs in the industry, doing exactly what they trained to do at Gnomon within just 6 months of finishing the program. So we're very serious about gainful employment for our graduates and alumni. And we want to be producing graduates and artists that are fueling the industry. We want to serve the industry with the people that are training at Gnomon. Now, what exactly is it that all of these alumni and these artists are learning while they're at our school? In just one term, it's going to be called digital production. But digital production is very large. There's a lot of different skill sets that go into what we teach. These are ranging from things like computer-based visual effects, character and creature design, digital sculpting, character and creature animation, environment design, lighting and rendering, matte painting and compositing, game asset creations, game engines, production workflows, and world building. Now, some of those terms might sound familiar to you and some of them might be new, but every one of these skill sets translates into these career pathways. So every different role that you see on the screen here is a unique role within the digital production pipeline for film and for games. And every one of these is a career path unto itself. So there's room for many different kinds of artists in the industry because each one of these roles has kind of its own specialization. I'd like to show you just 4 of these as examples of even just between 4 of them, how different they can be from one another and maybe have appeal for different types of artists. So the first up is character artist, and very much what we were doing with Josh today. This is an example of a character artist creating a creature in ZBrush. And this artist does exactly what the name sounds like. They are responsible for creating that final version of a 3D creature or character that is what the audience is actually going to be seeing on screen in a film or in a game. Typically, these are artists that also, have spent time drawing characters and creatures. A lot of character and creature artists can be, fairly traditional art leaning or have traditional art backgrounds, whether that's drawing or traditional sculpture. So this is a great pathway for someone that loves to draw these kinds of things, but wants to actually make the real assets that are going to be going into a film or a game. Next up are effects artists. Now, effects artists are a special type of animator. Essentially, they're creating amazing sequences like this. Often they're creating stuff that we've never seen before, special effects for films. And because these kinds of scenes are so complex, as you can see, there's millions of moving particles and debris and whatnot. They can't go in and animate these by hand individually, moving each piece around like you would, say, for a character. Instead, effects artists are using specialized software that essentially creates physics simulations. So they are simulating things like, obviously, large volumes of water splashing, debris moving through space as the structure is breaking apart in orbit around the planet. So they're taking into consideration real physical properties that exist in the real world because it needs to be believable to the human eye, but they're using software to create simulations that cause these physical properties to do things perhaps that we've never seen before. And that's where a lot of the magic is that we see in film today. This is a great role for an artist that wants to make amazing art, wants to make amazing visual things, but also you're very inquisitive and you want to be a creative problem solver, and you're always kind of curiously looking at the world around you, going, why does that work that way? And that is what effects artists are doing. Next up are compositors. Now, compositors are typically very much towards the end of the pipeline, and that is because a compositor takes all of the assets that all the other artists made and weaves them together into a final scene like this. So, for example, in the scene coming up next, after we look at this one, the tennis courts and background are 3D models. The tennis players are going to be actors filmed in front of green screens. The buildings and props in the foreground are 3D models with lighting placed on them. Texture painting, additional actors are inserted into the scene. A final lighting pass is done, and you wind up with a scene like this. That's pretty much, guys, 100% seamless. This is what's known as an establishing shot for film. And compositors are being used quite extensively for these kinds of shots because rather than a director having to scout out a real-world location, get permits to film there, hire a film crew, etc. Now they have the flexibility and can save time and money by going to an effects studio, saying, hey, we need a shot like this. So we need your modelers to make the appropriate models. We need to film, footage in front of green screens. We need to create all of those assets. But what we need is a really great compositor that can bring all of that together into a final scene where really no one knows the difference. So it gives us the ability to completely customize scenes like this. So if you're interested in doing that kind of thing, bringing it all together, pulling off the magic trick, if you will, of fooling the audience into believing that this was all real to begin with, that's essentially what a compositor does. Next up, we're going to go all the way towards the beginning of the pipeline. And this is where pre-visualization artists live. And what a previs artist does is they use more simplified models and simpler forms of animation to create essentially a moving storyboard of a film. These are artists that want to work in 3D and animation, but they're more big picture storyteller types. Rather than spending months on end on just some particular details of the model, they want to get it all across. And these artists at the beginning of the pipeline, they work very closely with the director and the cinematographer to set up all of these types of shots. They control the camera movement, the type of lens that's being used. Essentially, they make the film before everybody else goes and makes the film. So they use this as a template for the rest of the pipeline to work off of a common vision. So if you're kind of a big picture thinker, maybe you kind of think like a director, but you also want to work in 3D and animation, this could be a great role for you in the pipeline. So with just those 4 career pathways in mind, let's talk about Gnomon's academic offerings. How are we preparing students and artists to go and work professionally in all of these different kinds of roles in digital production? So I'll give you just a bird's eye view here. It's kind of all of our programs combined. Gnomon is a very focused school. Digital production is the thing that we specialize in teaching. So we have a full 4-year college degree. That's a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in digital production. We also offer something called our certificate program, which is a little bit more akin to higher education, say a master's level type of study. This is a more in-depth and higher paced 2-year program that, for instance, a student that may already have a degree from an art school or something like that can come in and use Gnomon as a finishing school to launch into the industry. Additionally, we have something called a foundation in art and design, which doesn't require a portfolio submission. It really is a course that helps you build your portfolio at Gnomon. And lastly, we have many of our classes from our full-time program available as individual courses. Again, no portfolio submission is required. If you want to take an individual class at Gnomon, you can just simply go to our website, sign up, and early next week, you'll have an opportunity to start signing up for individual classes for the next term coming up at Gnomon. All right. Just taking a little bit of a closer look at some of these. The Bachelor of Fine Arts degree at Gnomon is fully accredited, which means, of course, financial aid and all those usual suspects are available. It is full-time and it is on our campus. Obviously, under present social distancing, which hopefully will be through soon, we have been able to successfully move our entire full-time program online. The way that we did this was we actually already had to think that through years ago when we created a custom-built online platform for Gnomon classes. So we've been able to take the same experience that students are getting in the classroom and translate that to an online format where you have access to your instructor, demonstrations, group and peer critiques, as well as the various lectures that happen. We can facilitate that, and you can learn more about that by going to the Gnomon webpage. Just scrolling down on the front page there, you can watch a quick video on how our online system works. However, when we're through this quarantine, obviously all of this will move back on campus. And the Gnomon campus is a very inspiring place to be. When we say that a program is full-time, we mean full-time. You'll be in your classes, but also be spending the bulk of your time working on your assignments outside of the classroom. We have some optional concentrations in our BFA program. One of them is our game art concentration. So you would be starting in the program, learning a skill set in a pipeline that is going to work for film and just kind of the general digital production pipeline. Or you can choose specifically a concentration in game art, which will teach you how to do the pipeline specifically for game engines, which is what a game studio is looking for. We also have another concentration, which was recently announced, called the VFX concentration, which gives students that are aiming particularly at doing VFX the opportunity to take some additional VFX classes that were formerly only available in the 2-year program. So if you'd like to know more about those concentrations, you can certainly talk with our admissions team about that. Now, the BFA is going to teach you the entire pipeline. It's going to cover all the aspects of what we call a 3D generalist skill set. And this is important because it opens up all of the doors. Essentially, as you're going out into the industry to work, you can market yourself as an artist that can do more than just one thing, also while putting your best foot forward as an artist doing something that you're very passionate about. So we give you that entire 3D generalist skill set, all the aspects of the pipeline, and then your last 4 terms at Gnomon, you get to select 4 electives that let you sharpen up skills in a particular area of your choice. We have a rolling admission at Gnomon for all of our programs, which means you can apply not just in the fall, but also the winter, the spring, and the summer. And this is something that the majority of our students will actually stay on for the summer term while they're in the BFA, which allows them, if they don't take a summer break, to finish the program in 3 years rather than 4, so they can get out there and start working in the industry that much faster. Next up is our 2-year certificate program. This also is fully accredited, it's full-time, and it has 5 areas of study, ranging from things like modeling and texturing to animation, VFX, and so forth. This also is, something that is, I like to call it a little bit more like a intensive 2 years of Navy SEALs training in digital production. As I mentioned before, typically this is utilized by students who may already have a degree and are looking for an intensive 2-year program to essentially finish out that area of specialization for them so that they can start working. Now, for our full-time programs, especially our BFA, Gnomon does take transfers. So if you're interested in transferring into, say, the BFA program, we do have a transfer agreement, and you could talk with our advisors about what of your courses that you've taken will transfer into the program and develop a strategy for being able to do that. And I would definitely encourage you to look into that if you're interested. Now, let's see here. We also have our Foundation in Art and Design, which, as I mentioned, is it's a 1-year-long course that is designed to help you build your portfolio. It's not required to stay in it for an entire year. It has foundational classes like figure drawing, anatomy for artists, perspective drawing, color and light theory, and you also get into some great entertainment design classes like character design, vehicle and mech design, creature design, so forth. This is designed with no portfolio application necessary. It's to help you build your portfolio. It's typically very useful for students who might be coming straight from high school into Gnomon's BFA program, and they still need to either build a portfolio, or perhaps they haven't had an opportunity to take some of those foundational art classes first. So it's something you can sign up for through admissions, and you essentially stay in it to get the classes that you need. And under the advisement admissions, you can know when it's an appropriate time for you to apply to the full-time program. Now, if you're not interested in going to a school like Gnomon, maybe you want to study illustration or another art discipline that's not digital production, we also have students who are utilizing the Foundation as a course for portfolio building to apply to other art schools. So this is a great option for that as well. These are 3-hour classes, a course of 10 weeks. So an accumulative 30 hours of class time, and well over 70 of the classes that we teach in our full-time program are available individually. Many of them are in the evenings. You can even take classes on weekends. So this is something that, say, you're already you're working on your associates in a community college, and you want to take an individual class at Gnomon, either to start to kind of test the waters of digital production and learning some of these skill sets, or you want to get a head start before you transfer into Gnomon. This is a possibility for you. Or if you're out there and you're as long as you're an adult and a high school graduate, you can take an individual class for additional skill building. There's also a great ETP program run by the state of California, where if we enter into agreement with the studio that you work at, professionals working in the industry also have the opportunity to have subsidized education in our individual classes. You can learn more about that by speaking with an admissions representative. So one really important thing to know about Gnomon, if you're considering any of these options, is that we do things very differently than most other art schools. And one of those most important aspects is the way that admissions works at Gnomon. This is our team of admissions advisors, and my colleague Xander has actually been in the chat with you today, answering questions and bringing questions through to me. Our advisors actually are your first step of interest at Gnomon. These aren't the people that you wait to speak to when you feel like you've got everything together and your portfolio is ready. They're actually the people that help you get ready to apply. What does that look like? Well, you could reach out to an advisor today, and Xander will put a link in the chat where you can kind of enter in some of your information, provide some contact information that we'll just use to get an advisor in touch with you. We're not going to utilize that to call you up at dinner time for the rest of your life or something like that. Just one of these advisors will reach out, and you'll start having a conversation about what you're interested in, what your goals are, how Gnomon might be able to help you achieve those goals. And you'll get an offer for free portfolio coaching. So you start showing your artwork. Doesn't have to be a finished or polished portfolio. You just start looking at your artwork, and they will coach you in how to start assembling a portfolio should you want to apply to Gnomon. So I can't emphasize enough. Definitely reach out to our admissions team if you're interested in applying, or you're curious about possibility of transferring from your existing school into the program here at Gnomon. We actually have a lot of transfer students that do come over from a lot of the community colleges in the area. So definitely reach out to these guys. Lastly, I'll mention that the Gnomon campus, which we showed a reel for at the beginning of this stream, is located in Hollywood. It's actually on a production lot in Hollywood. This is really, really cool. It immerses our students in a production environment. Feels more like working at a studio than going to a college. But that location is also strategic. And that is because every Gnomon instructor that works at our school is required to be a presently working industry artist. So being in Hollywood puts us closer to our instructors so that they can commute from their day job in studio right over to the classroom, come into the classroom, start teaching their students the exact same workflows that they are using on a daily basis in studio. Proximity to those studios also helps us with placement of our students. So we have we've had upwards of 50 studios coming just to the Gnomon campus 4 times a year for our employer preview days. And that's an opportunity for Gnomon students to essentially show their work to studios like Disney or DreamWorks, Naughty Dog, Riot Games, Blizzard Entertainment, and the list goes on. But these studios will send their recruiters out, some art directors to look at Gnomon student work, and a lot of times, interviews are lined up on the spot. So our location serves us very well, and we encourage you that when we all come out of quarantine, and as schools start to open up again and Gnomon is open, come out and visit our campus, take a tour. You can take a private tour, you can come with your class to take a tour, but we'd love to meet you. Another great way to get to know Gnomon is through our live events. Now we've been streaming all of our events just like today's stream. And these are events ranging from educational streams to interviews with artists and studios. But we want to be able to provide educational events to you for free. And when we are on campus, we host these events at our soundstage right on campus. And these have been some amazing events with studios like Marvel, as well as some of the top game studios out there, amazing films and television programs that are being produced. We get to hear from their art department. We get to hear from those working in the disciplines that Gnomon is training artists for. And so it gives a great current and inside perspective in the industry, provides our students with an ecosystem and connections with the industry, but also gives you an opportunity to attend an event for free to learn more. So these are all ways that you can connect with Gnomon. And last but not least, Gnomon is also has our own open house. During quarantine, we have done a virtual open house, which you can see on our YouTube channel to learn more about our programs, hear from alumni on a panel, and so forth. And as campus starts to reopen, we'll be hosting more open house events. So stay tuned to us on social media to learn more about studio events that we're hosting, as well as Gnomon Open House coming up. We're spending time in classrooms as well. So if you are either at a local college or you're a high school student and you would love Gnomon to visit your virtual classroom, we do a really cool drawing session together in a cloud-based canvas called Magma Studio while we discuss the entertainment industry, the careers that are available, and how Gnomon is creating pathways for artists into those careers. So guys, I want to thank you for tuning in today. We had a wonderful time with Josh, and if you didn't get to catch all of what Josh was doing to introduce us to ZBrush, I encourage you to go see that video on demand in our Twitch channel or YouTube, which also has closed captioning available. We'll see you back here again soon for the Gnomon stream. Be sure to tune in on Wednesday for Josh's Art Jam, where he will be in ZBrush, taking us a bit further than what he showed us today. So in the meantime, everyone stay safe, stay creative. This is Adam, your host, and we'd love to see you back here.